Hello everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's live sharing. Last week I did a little talk in a private group about proprioception, and that was following a conversation I was having with a student of mine, and that very much kind of resonated also with what I've been talking about for some time now. So we were talking about how during this time of the confinement, the restrictions, the limitations during the pandemic might well be having an effect on our proprioception. And maybe you've even noticed that. And I guess that would just make also perfect sense, because it's to do with a part of our nervous system that can read and assess the amount of force, our weightedness, the impact, the distance of our every move and action, and then come up with an appropriate response to that. And it happens all the time, like a feedback loop, through kind of sensory points throughout our body. Kind of simplifying this. I'll share the more detailed talk on that actually also here on the page later, after I've done the little practice here. And during challenging times, and maybe after experiencing a traumatic experience and not fully processing that, our proprioception can really be disturbed. So trauma can highly dysregulate our proprioception. We also often speak of dissociation, where people might not even be able to feel parts of their body, like there's this numbing happening. And especially with the Western lifestyle and a concrete world, and I go on about that all the time, the kind of modern development of communication, the fact that we wear shoes and we sit on chairs, and all of those things, all of our habitual patterns, plus all of the stories and dramas of our lifetime, every day lead to like a numbing of our innate intelligence anyway. So we're losing a whole degree of resilience and intelligence in our systems. And so when there is a kind of more traumatic or challenging experience that's coming into our life, and we are struggling to deal with it properly, that might well very quickly, and before you know it, lead to quite a bit of disturbance in the nervous system for sure, but in our proprioception. So I was talking also a little bit about the things that we might be able to do in a yoga class and the way that we teach yoga. So I just wanted to actually focus more on that today. I was suggesting, there's lots and lots of different things, but I was just suggesting kind of 4 different things that I really like playing with, and I wanted to explore those here today with 2-3 really simple basic postures. It's not so much about the posture, but more about the kind of the ideas, the principle of how we can maybe kind of improve our proprioception through the practice. So one of the things is that I like to do is kind of doing little exercises, but giving an opportunity to check in what it feels before and what it feels after. So that way we are re-educating our nervous system and stimulating sensory awareness and learning from sensory input. And in a yoga practice, we've got lots of opportunities for that. So why don't we play with that in cat pose, for example? So if you want to join me, feel free to just go ahead, so you can actually feel it in your own body, what I'm talking about. So if you just come into a cat pose and just go through cat-cow in your own way, in your own style, as you normally do it, a couple of rounds, with or without the breath, as you wish. And the point of it here is really just to check in. How does that feel right now? How is the movement through the spine? What's the range of movement here? Are you observing any little areas of tension, or maybe there is a part of the spine that you can't even quite really get a sense of? Maybe the spine sort of rounding in both directions beautifully, vertebra by vertebra, but there's this kind of chunk that kind of goes as one, whatever it might be. So just taking a little snapshot of what cat-cow feels like right now, the amount of effort that you're putting in, also your weightedness. Taking a little snapshot of that. Good. And then we kind of store that away, and let's come onto our backs into a comfortable position with the knees bent, feet not too far away, making sure the legs find some support in the way that you're placing your feet. And let's just simply do a few rounds of pelvic rocks here. Slowly arching the lower back and tilting the pelvis away from us. And then drawing the pelvis up towards the face and letting the lower back drop down. And let's do that with the breath, inhaling, sending the pelvis away. And exhaling, drawing the pelvis up, the lower back drops. Inhaling. And exhaling. We'll do a few more rounds of this and see if you can explore a little bit the range of movement here. How far is the pelvis going, each direction? Maybe you're observing how the movement is easing up a little bit, or maybe how it's beginning to travel a bit more through the spine. Your head might want to be joining in, so let the head be kind of tilting along with the rocking of the pelvis. And we take really quiet, conscious deep breaths here with this movement. A few more rounds. And let's do maybe a handful more rounds, but then with just a really silly, puffy, big, huge, chesty breath. So next time you inhale and you send the pelvis away, it goes really big, puffy breath into the chest and releasing from the chest as you tilt the pelvis up to the face. Go again. Let's do 2 or 3 more. Big, puffy, chesty breaths with the movement. Let's do 1 more. And then just allow the pelvis to settle in whatever feels like a neutral position for you. Letting that become a bit quiet again. Take a breath here. And then by dropping the shoulders down, we can float the arms up. And we interlock the fingers here and cup the hands around the back of the head. So just lift the head up a little bit and cup the hands around the back of the head. Relax your elbows for a moment. And we're going to need really quite a strong interlock here with the fingers. So make sure that you really bring in those fingers together, strong fingers. Let's lift the elbows up towards the ceiling, and at the same time we want to let the shoulders drop away from the ears, so there's a lot of space there between the shoulders and the ears. Really relaxed. And then with the strength of the hands, we're going to lift up that very, very, very heavy head so that we can look down between the legs. And naturally your abdominals might just join in a little bit, so let's see if we can actually relax the abdominal effort a little bit here. What I quite like to do is sort of walk myself up onto the edges of my scapula because I can rest a bit more through my structure this way. And then the abdominals can relax a bit more. Then we can consciously relax the neck muscles and the throat, soften a little bit between the collarbones. Relaxing the chest behind the heart. And so the head is really, really heavy in those hands. Really heavy. And that's a fact, it is quite heavy. So, but see if you can really just rest the head in your strong hands. And the more you can let it rest and be really passive here, the more you might feel this lengthening trickling all the way down the spine. It might at first seem unrelated, but maybe you could even relax the pelvic floor effort, or just notice that I might have wanted to join in somehow to support you here. See what happens if you relax that. And then in slow motion, almost like you want to just release one vertebra at a time in the cervical spine, where you release the head back down to the floor. Just really because it's getting even heavier and heavier. You're letting it slowly come back down. And then when it comes to rest, you can release the arms down to the side of the body. Take a nice deep breath here. And let's go via the side and up and come back into a cat pose and just have another go at cat-cow just as we started and see what that feels like. So first, as you're coming onto your hands in the first place, observe what that feels like in terms of your weightedness and the kind of weight that you perceive through the hands. And then simply rounding into cat and cow in, again, any pace as you wish to do it, your own method. But just taking a little comparison here. How does that feel compared to before with regards to the range of movement, the ease of the movement, the awareness of all of the different vertebrae in the spine, your weightedness? How does it feel? Is it the same? Maybe. Is it different? Maybe. If it is, how is it different? Just see if you can really highlight all of the things that feel different to you before. Can you describe them for yourself? Great. Good. And then we come into a neutral position. And then something else that I like to play with is, so when it comes to, in fact, if you want to sit back for a moment. So when it comes to prompting alignment or, the kind of pushing up or out and down and this and I don't know, whatever, all these kind of things that we try to do to have the proper posture, the proper pose, is actually to find some cues, how people can explore that for themselves from their own sensory input. So obviously, those of you who teach yoga, you might find there's a whole bunch of people who kind of go like this, and you would probably give them some sort of note to, I don't know, come into a more neutral position. And there's another whole bunch of people who go a little bit more sort of strong superhero. So why not actually take everyone through the two extremes, so that their nervous system can actually see what that feels like? So why don't we all go into this collapsed place for a moment and notice how heavy that is. So we can maybe observe that in the wrists and, kind of you might feel the weight of the organs hanging off the lumbar spine. I don't know, whatever it is. Maybe this is like your happy place. So observe that too, because then we can already figure out a little bit our tendencies and our patterns. Or what about if we go into superhero yogi mode, like let's push the floor away, be super active. What does that feel like? And there'll be a whole bunch of people who will be super happy here, and others going like, oh my goodness, that's like a bit too much work. Oof. But we go to the extreme. So by going to the extreme, the nervous system, the brain goes, okay, so that, that's my tendency because that's the happy place, or I'm a bit more here. And then we can all find that for ourselves where we have maybe the least amount of effort, but also we're not collapsing, so that we are feeling maybe a little bit more spacious and supported. And can we identify that sense of feeling supported, maybe through the structure of the bones, the arms, the legs? So just going through the extreme range. And as we've already gone a little bit here on the hands now, let's just walk the hands around a little bit. So this is another thing, I'm beginning to get uncomfortable on my wrists. So it triggers the story of, no, that's hurting and I need to come off. But actually, maybe the true sensation of it is like, yes, I can feel the pressure and weight bearing through the tissues here, and it's getting maybe a little bit uncomfortable. And as I'm now walking the hands around, I might find that this is already giving me enough relief so I can even stay a little bit longer on my wrists and not follow that same story of, okay, I must take a break. And maybe it isn't okay. Maybe it is the time to go off the wrist and take a break, but maybe just walking around could be another option. Okay, so now we're here on all fours. We'll do another little before and after-ish sort of thing, or we'll just kind of really tune into the effect of something. So we're going to pick up the right foot, the knee stays on the floor, and then just turning the foot out to the side. And that's kind of coming from the hip, actually, from the hip socket. And then I'm turning the leg the other way, moving the foot across the calf, the leg that's on the floor. So I'm kind of crossing over. And then going into this internal rotation at the hip socket, the foot goes outwards, and then into external rotation at the hip socket and moving the foot across the other leg. And then just doing that a couple more times. See if you can really kind of go as far as possible with the turning of the leg. And we come back to the center. And then from here, we lift that right hip off or higher up. The knee comes off the floor. So the right hip lifts up, the knee off the floor. And I'm taking the leg out to the side and then back to the center, staying off the floor. Out to the side and back down. Let's do maybe 3 more. So out and down. If you want to breathe with it, go for it. Let's go 1 more. Okay, now leave the knee off the floor and only put the top of the foot down. Only the top of the foot, knee off the floor, hip is high. And now imagine you could grow your thigh bone as if that was possible to release the knee back down. So in a way you want to leave the hip as high as possible, but also release the knee back down towards the floor. So you just need to grow your thigh bone. See if that is a possibility. Kind of using a little bit the power of imagination here. Slowly, slowly, slowly. So it's like we're really letting the knee melt down like a knife through butter. And then slowly, slowly that knee comes down and we can put our weight equally between the 2 knees again. But just take a moment here to observe what that feels like in the right leg and in the left leg and on the knees and in the hips. And I'm assuming that feels quite different. Obviously, can't ask you right now. So just come back for a moment and kneel, to give the hands a little break. But also in this kneeling position, what does that feel like now? On the right side and the left side, especially in the knee, in the compaction of that deep flexion, in the weight that you might perceive, right sit bones, left sit bones, and just kind of on the whole right side of the body in a way. So when I do something like this, I really like to pause to observe the effect when, we're doing something one-sided, because then you can really compare it. With the first one that we did with the cat, you had to remember what it was like before the first time around we did it. Whereas now, obviously, I have a direct comparison, left side, right side. And then I guess we would go ahead and balance that out on the other side in a class situation. I'm going to leave that for today, just because I want to make sure that we also go through some of the other kind of possibilities on how to play with this stuff. So let's go prepare for like a dog pose. I'm going to go a little bit again with the sort of taking the body through the extreme habits where we kind of prefer hanging out, and see whether we can find a little bit more of a supported, rested kind of middle ground to come up into our downward facing dog. So I'm starting from a short stance cat pose, just for the sake of this exercise, because it's a bit easier. And we tuck the toes under and we sit back. And then here I've got the same thing that we did in cat pose, so, or similar anyway. So some of us have the tendency to just not trust the ground and kind of, you know, pull ourselves up and away from it. So if I asked you to take all of your weight out of your hands without actually leaving the mat, but there's just as little weight on the hands as you possibly can, so I could almost slide a piece of paper under the hand, between the hand and the mat. Observe the amount of crazy effort that is required in your legs and your whole body and your back to pull yourself away with that weight. Poof. Okay. And then we could go into the opposite. Just kind of collapse and go oof. And so here I'm noticing I kind of collapsed a bit more into the wrist. I'm also noticing that now my toes are really not liking it. Before it was a bit different, but I'm really overstretching my toes. And my lower back sort of dropped down, and that means I'm just sort of letting my whole organs really just hang off my spine. And then there is a kind of another option that what people might do here is kind of again into that superhero mode. So they might be going pushing the ground away because we are ready to go into downward facing dog. And again, there is so much effort there. So try that and see whether that might be your sort of default place. I know for a fact that I'm always a little bit more at the lazy end, for sure. But so I check in with that and say, okay, am I sort of, just maybe a little bit disconnected here because I'm a bit too lazy. So let's see if we can find that middle ground where I'm resting through the arms, through the structure. I'm giving the weight of the shoulders down through the hands into the ground. And that actually automatically is giving me a little bit of that kind of rounder shape, which means I'm not contracting and sucking the organs in, but I'm actually just sort of gathered in naturally through my middle this way. And then from here, we can just open up into downward facing dog, resting into the hands and the feet. There's no push required to do that, to come up and just play with that. If you ended up a little bit short, then feel free to nuzzle your feet back. But just observe how much ease we might all have in the shoulders because we were just resting into the hands and feet rather than pushing ourselves up. And then we can bend the knees and come back into all fours. Feel free to sit back or rest for a moment if you want. What else did I want to play with? Oh yes, I actually wanted to come and lie down. So also this kind of the thing I really like to play with, and it goes a little bit with this. So I was going through some of the extremes to let my nervous system figure out, where I'm at, what my body is like in space, in relationship to the ground, the amount of effort I'm putting in. But then to somehow go to that place that is actually more comfortable. And it's just that, before I couldn't quite process that through, but I was exploring that by going through the extremes to find that place where it was the most restful and most comfortable. And because if we are finding a way to support the body in such a way that there is that sense of comfort, that means also a sense of safe. And when there is a sense of safe, that's when we can start to rewrite those patterns and to begin to heal. So let's come to lie down in our undoing position, what I call the undoing position, which is with the knees bent, feet on the floor. And I've already done a couple of videos on the placement of the feet and all of that. But so in general, I don't want to have my feet too far away, so that there's a sense that the legs can just rest into the feet. So if my foot was really far away, then on a slippery surface, that would just sort of slide away. It's not too close. There is no kind of over tension in the joints this way. No, they are comfortable distance still, but just not too far away. And also I'm placing my feet quite wide so that if I was to fall asleep, my legs may not fall out to the side. So that means also, again, there's a little bit more quiet here in the inner thighs and in the groins as I'm coming to this undoing position. And then sometimes it depends on what I want to do, but I quite like bringing the arms up and over the head behind. And here we've got a whole range of possibilities of what might be comfortable. So your shoulders might be absolutely happy with the arms quite parallel. Maybe we need to open the arms quite a bit more, round them, so that when the elbows are round, the full arm can actually rest on the ground. And that gives us a whole different sensation. Maybe we need to bring the arms way out to the sides so that it's more comfortable. And then what I would always ask to check in with is like, so how does that feel really across the front of the chest, the front body? Like, does it feel like a gentle stretch sensation and opening? Or does it feel maybe quite exposed? And does that feel okay? Does that feel a bit like a vulnerable place? And is that still okay? Or does it feel all exposed, but like, you know, your heart is shining? Like, where are you at with this? And is this okay? And if it's not okay, you know, you have a choice. So bring your arms back down or more out to the side, or rest your hands on your belly and bring them to a quieter place. So really make your choice here and find the comfortable position for you. And then another thing I really like to play with is using the power of imagination and visualizations. And with that, of course, we need to be very aware of the group of people that we're working with, and if the imagery really is appropriate and all of that, if the language is okay. And you know, you need to be creative with that. There's always a way to use some kind of images, probably. So often in yoga, we get these instructions of breathing into this part of the body, breathing into that part of the body, breathing around in circles and whatnot. And we know we're only breathing into the lungs, right? So I also sometimes say that, you know, like just breathe and breathe all the way into your toes in a way. And that can be quite a nice instruction, but that might already be kind of going a step too far. Now, remember, we've kind of gone to this place of, you know, dissociation, being quite disconnected. I might not even be aware where my toes are. So maybe we need to use something a bit more tangible. So something that I like doing is getting people to breathe along their spine, she says. But the way I would prompt this is, you know, so just imagine that this was possible. Imagine it was possible to breathe along your spine. Then you inhale, that you could send your breath all the way along the spine until the very bottom of the spine. And then when you exhale, it's possible to let the breath come all the way up again along the spine, and then to go through the skull and to leave out through the crown of the head. So to begin with, I'm already kind of going about in a different way, that we want to use the power of our imagination. It's like a pretend, right? And then we can go even further and say, you know, maybe you want to visualize like a little pipeline that we, you know, along your spine. And you're just sending the breath along that pipe all the way down to the very bottom of it, and then all the way up and out, and it kind of goes through this balloon of the skull and then out through the top of the head. Or maybe you want to kind of use a paintbrush, and as you breathe down, you're kind of painting along your spine all the way down to the tailbone, and then as you breathe out in a different color, you paint the spine up again, all the way, including the skull, and out through the crown. Or maybe you're wandering along a little garden path that you imagine. So there's all sorts of different images that we could possibly use and play with to see whether we can connect the breath with the body and the mind with the body. And all of this is a remapping of the body on the brain. So I'm just going to let you play with maybe one of those images that you thought, oh, that's kind of fun. And just see what that feels like. And then we could maybe just finish up with one little posture here. We can do a bridge pose. I'm going to try and do a bridge pose. Like, well, we could also do a little, how about I do it this way and how about we do it this way? So we could also compare and actually make people, like let people make up their own mind what they prefer. So we could play with the instruction of, let's place the feet a little bit closer in towards the sit bones and engage your feet, push down through the feet and lift your pelvis up towards the ceiling. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then take a deep breath. And with the exhale, we release the spine and the pelvis all the way back down to the floor. Something like that. So that would be a little bit more of a top-down instruction from the head to the body. Or we could play with this. So we can also offer both, just to get people a bit of an idea. So feel the soles of the feet on the ground. Be aware of the kind of knobbly bits of the mat. Can you pick them up through the skin? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe wiggle your toes a little bit and see if you can spread them out a little bit. So kind of have nice big feet, big imprints on the mat. And then see if you can just give your weight down through the feet. And you could imagine that you're standing up from a chair. You know, when we stand up from a chair, and we do it every day, I don't know, 1,000,000 times. We just sort of shift our weight forwards, our center of gravity into the feet, and then down we give the weight and come up. So it's a bit like that here. So I'm giving my weight down through the feet. And then there's a little bit of a pressing down, engaging into the ground. And the pelvis is already responding and beginning to float up. Let's maybe work with the breath. We can take a nice deep breath in. And with the exhale, give more weight down through the feet. And float the pelvis a little bit more in response. And taking another deep breath. We've almost managed to get off the chair. Give the weight down through those feet and let the pelvis float. Let's take one more deep breath. With the exhale, giving the weight down through the feet and floating the pelvis all the way up into your bridge pose. And at the top, we take a deep breath in. And then let's maybe take 3, 4, 5 exhalations to release the spine back down. So take your time. With every exhale, you let the belly soften and release 1 or 2 more vertebrae. Pause, inhale, and exhale. Releasing a few more. Letting the belly empty and relax. Relax the glutes if you can. And simply focusing on the spine here as that's settling back down to the floor. Vertebra by vertebra, all the way until the sacrum comes to settle. And we can release the tailbone back down. Great. And how did that feel? See if you can just describe that for yourself, the difference. Maybe you preferred the first, maybe you preferred the second. All is good. Let's drop the shoulders into the ground to float the arms up if your arms are still over the head. And release the arms back down to the side of the body. Good. And then we can let the legs fall up into the body. Cross your ankles over, maybe hug the legs in if you want for a moment, have a little rock. And then we can roll onto the side. Feel free to stay on your side for a couple of breaths, letting the fluid settle, let the body catch up with the direction of gravity here, changing. And then slowly finding your way back to sitting. Thank you for joining. So this wasn't a practice as such, but a bit of an exploration, a bit of a play of feeling some of these principles in your body and some food for thought, maybe some ideas of how we can work with our yoga to improve proprioception. That is definitely being challenged in these times, and just through Western lifestyle anyway, but through a challenging pandemic for sure as well. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions. As usual, you know how much I love hearing from you. Comment below this video. Maybe you have some other techniques that are a little bit in this line and you really enjoy playing with. Share them. I'd love a conversation to take place, an exchange of ideas. Just add them below the video in your comments. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I don't know where you are. In Lisbon, it's beautiful sunshine. Spring has really truly arrived. So I might just go outside. That is also good for my proprioception, for sure, to let my body be in expression with the outdoors again. Anyway, lots of love. Thank you for watching, and take care of yourself. Bye for now.